Let's talk about it. It's me and Marcus Mosher here. We're talking about the Deion to Jerry connection. I think a lot of people are underestimating how crazy Jerry is, how desperate Jerry is for attention, and how just desperate the Cowboys are to find the right coach, right? You fired Jason Garrett. You didn't fire Mike McCarthy, but you let him walk, right? There was no conservative effort to keep him. And so they really need something to hit, because I feel like if Mike McCarthy goes, say, to the Bears and finds instant success and the Dallas Cowboys are struggling, it'd be a tough look for Jerry. So how does the Deion Sanders, Jerry Jones relationship work as owner, excuse me?
Well, it really helps that there's some familiarity there. And one of the things that if you're going to be a Cowboys head coach, you got to understand how the owner and the front office works, where Jerry Jones has ultimate say. He is the GM, he is the owner, he's the president, and he likes to be involved. He goes to team meetings, he goes to practices. He's going to want to be involved on a day-to-day basis. So you've got to know how to navigate that. I think Deion does, just from not only his time as a player in Dallas, but just being Jerry Jones's friend for so many years. So I do think that helps. I think the other thing why this maybe makes more sense than some of the other options is that the Cowboys need somebody that can stand up to Jerry Jones and say, hey, no, this is the way that we want to run things. Jason Garrett never did it. Mike McCarthy did it at times. But I think Deion has enough cachet and enough of a brand to say, like, hey, I'm going to do things my way. You're hiring me to do things my way. Step aside a little bit. I still want to work with you, but this is how we're going to do it. And this is why we're going to do it. The Cowboys desperately need somebody to be the face of their franchise outside of Jerry Jones. And unfortunately, with the last couple head coaching hires, whether it was Wade Phillips, Jason Garrett, or Mike McCarthy, people still saw Jerry Jones as the face of the franchise, and he probably always will be to a degree because he owns the team. But if Deion is your head coach, he's the figurehead, right? He's the one that people are going to want to be talking to post-game, pre-game, on Thursday as you get ready for a big matchup against the Eagles. I do think the Cowboys could really benefit from having somebody like that in their franchise. And I think the other reason why this might work, where you look at some of the other candidates the Cowboys are looking at, like a Kellen Moore, who is an offensive-minded head coach, or a Robert Saleh, who was a former defensive coordinator and a head coach. Deion is a CEO type of head coach, right? He's not calling plays and he's not running the offense. But I think his superpower in the NFL would be to be able to bring in really good assistants and coordinators. And I think someone like Mike Zimmer, who worked for him in the past, who he played under in Dallas, could be retained as the defensive coordinator. Maybe he's able to go out and get a rock star offensive coordinator that we're not even talking about right now. I think Deion's ability to bring in a really good staff could be the reason why it works in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons he had a lot of success this past season. He took a shot on Robert Livingston, who was with the Bengals for like a decade and was a safeties coach or scouting personnel, whatever. It was never a coordinator. And then he was like, hey, you're my coordinator. Robert Livingston comes in and totally flips the Colorado defense. They went from one of the worst in the country to a really solid defense. They led the Big 12 in sacks. So I think he knows what he's doing in terms of putting a team around him. Now, there was a point that you made that's kind of been one of my counterpoints to this move. So I wanted to circle back to that. Jerry Jones loves attention. Deion Sanders loves attention. Can they share the spotlight? Right. I think Jerry Jones, he has the weekly radio show where he was like berating the guy for asking him a hard question. He has just sort of this aura to him where I think he enjoys being the face. Would he be okay with someone upstaging him, if you will?
I don't know. It's a really good question. We've had coaches in the past in Dallas, whether it was Bill Parcells or Jimmy Johnson, that were very successful. But Jerry Jones didn't really enjoy that because he wanted to be the face, right? And Jerry Jones has always been adamant, like he wants to enjoy working for how many days he has left, right? He doesn't want to go into work feeling like he's restrained or he doesn't like the people that he's working with. And of course, he loves Deion, but would he love sharing the spotlight? I don't know. And I think that's one of the issues that I have is how would that marriage work as a owner, president, GM, and a head coach? Again, I have some concerns, but if you're a Cowboy fan, I think it's way better than the alternative of just having I don't want to say puppet at head coach, but frankly, a puppet at head coach. I think Deion could offer something different here.
Okay, and then another point that I've kind of been making is at Colorado, Deion Sanders, I don't want to say he runs the program, like runs the school, but he may as well be the school president, right? He kind of does whatever he wants. He has his
He's the
merchandise,
face of the school, right? When
right?
you think of Colorado, you think of Dion.
Right. And so is he going to have that sort of autonomy in Dallas, right? Where in Colorado, he's like, okay, we're building the roster this way. I'm bringing in these coaches. I'm going to have my son's filming for his YouTube channel, my friends filming for his YouTube channel. We're going to have Amazon Prime also filming for their show. And I'm also going to sort of do things my way. I'm not going to do at home visits. I'm going to do this, do that. Is he going to have that freedom in the NFL? Is that even possible?
Again, I think it's complicated. Do I think that Jerry Jones would love having Amazon Prime there to film every practice and make it, or a Netflix show where we're talking about prime time in Dallas? Absolutely. But do I think Jerry Jones would give up control and free agency in the draft? No, I don't. And I think that's where things would really need to be we need to have some deep conversations about that, because Jerry Jones does not spend in free agency anymore. Like, the Cowboys are one of the least active teams in free agency.
Yeah.
They hoard draft picks. They love to draft and develop. Is that a philosophy that Deion's going to want to do? This long play of, hey, we draft these guys, we're developing them for year 3, year 4. Or would Deion want to be more active in free agency and try to recruit guys maybe that he knows to help try to win right away? It's one of the reasons why I still have some serious doubts that this is actually going to happen in Dallas.
Yeah, I think it's ironic that Colorado's sort of being thrown under the bus right now for not giving enough financial support. And it's like, okay, your top option, the team that doesn't spend any money in the NFL, have some fun. So It'll be interesting to see what works. Also, final question about Jerry Jones before we move on. Is he, or did he make the greatest cameo appearance ever in Landman?
It's pretty close. It's definitely one of the best sports cameos we've seen. But I also, it's not really acting from Jerry Jones. He's just telling the truth. Like, he bought the Cowboys to be able to work with his family, and that's been the case this entire time. And it's maybe one of the reasons that they haven't been able to cross this divisional round barrier over the last 20 years. But I think it's also the reason why Jerry Jones loves working for the Cowboys, is because every day he gets to work with his sons and his daughter, and he really enjoys being the Dallas Cowboy owner and president and general manager. So, but yes, the answer to your question, absolutely. Jerry Jones was phenomenal. Man.
Watching the show, and I was like, Jerry. And then I, like, as the scene went on, I was like, Jerry, okay. Usually when actors,
that's a heater.
Yeah, usually when athletes or people who aren't like professionally trained actors go on the show, there's like this awkwardness where it's like, it's been my dream. I've always wanted to do this. It's like they're reading a cue card or something. Jerry was like speaking from the heart. It was crazy. So that was just a fun little question there. When we come back, we're going to dive into Marcus's favorite aspect of the NFL, which is the draft. And we're going to talk about Colorado's 2 top draft prospects. Are they really contenders? Are they not? Are they second round picks? We'll talk about it. This episode of Locked On Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps everything exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around for your winnings. You shouldn't have to refresh the app. It's just boom, you win, you get your money. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay, Marcus, it's time to talk about your favorite aspect of football, which is the intersection between the NFL and college football, the NFL draft. And it's always a weird time because, as we all know, anyone can make a mock draft, right? Anyone could go on PFF and be like, Quinn Ewers, pick 1, or Shedeur Sanders, pick 1, whatever it is. And we've heard some mixed reviews on this quarterback class. It's obviously not last year's. There's not going to be 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round. But we've heard a lot of mixed reviews on Shedeur Sanders. I forgot who it was, but they reported that, hey, I'm getting a second-round grade on him from NFL personnel, right? So let's talk about Shedeur. Where do you see him range-wise going, and what is the possible Deion Sanders effect with this pick?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of teams in this class that have a round 2 grade on Shedeur Sanders, but that doesn't mean that's where he's going to be drafted. You look at the top of this draft, and there's 7 teams inside the top 10 that need quarterbacks, and then you go look at free agency, and it's like Sam Darnold and Justin Fields are your top options. So Shador is getting picked in the top 10. Like he just is, despite maybe some of the flaws in his game. But I also think he's not a bad quarterback prospect either. If you compare him to last year's prospects, he's not Caleb Williams. He's not Drake May. He's not Jaden Daniels. But if you compare him to that next group of quarterbacks, the J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, and Michael Penix, I think he slots right in there among that group. And we saw that group, I believe, go 8, 10, and 12 last year. So with this being a weaker draft class, I absolutely see Shador going very high in this class. I think he still has a chance to be the number 1 overall pick in this class. It's just, can the right team pick him? Where does he land? I think he has a chance to be a very good starting quarterback in the NFL. And if you think this guy has a chance to be top 10, top 12 quarterback in the league, you pick him inside the top 5.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about Shador is really solid quarterback. Obviously, there's been a lot of noise about his father, and we're going to go to that element right now. There's been sort of this narrative that they won't let certain teams pick him. I think Shador tried to calm those waves a couple weeks ago where he's like, I'll play wherever or whatever. Like he said something to that effect. But we've constantly heard it'll be an Eli. Coach Prime wants to make sure his sons and Travis play for the right teams. So how much of a presence do you think Deion Sanders has? And now it doesn't have to be a public presence. And I think that's where people are getting confused. How much of an impact or presence will he have on this draft process for Shador?
I think he's going to have somewhat of an impact, but I think it's going to be more like teams drafting in the late teens or 20s, just maybe won't get interviews or pro day workouts or 30 visits with him. I think Shador's going to be, or I think Deion's going to be very careful about how many different teams he goes and sees. But I think he's going to have visits with Tennessee, Cleveland, the Giants, Las Vegas, the Jets. All those teams are going to be interviewing Shador. And I would be shocked if he gets outside the top 10. Will Deion try to push Shador to one of these teams? I have my doubts, but we'll see.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I think everyone thinks that the draft is like we're playing Madden here, where it's like I'm going to force this trade and it's just going to happen. Yeah. But how likely is it for someone, Deion Sanders, who we'll assume for this exercise, he's the Colorado head coach, so obviously he's coaching college football. He's a legend of the game. Let's not pretend like he's not. But how likely or possible is it for him to be like, my son's not going there, and that team going to be like, okay, how are they just going to be like, we don't have to listen to you?
I think it's going to be, we don't have to listen to you. But at the same time, I'm looking at somebody like Cleveland at number 2, right? They clearly need a quarterback. And I know Cleveland's been a bit of a disaster over the last couple of years, right? Now they did make the playoffs in 2023. They won a playoff game in 2020. So it's not like they've been completely out of the playoffs. But if you're Deion and you're Shador, yeah, maybe that's not the most or the best situation, but you are going with Kevin Stefanski, a head coach of the year candidate. I think he was a coach. Sorry, I think he won that award twice. And you would go at number 2, and being the number 2 draft pick in any draft is really, really cool. And yeah, again, it might not be the best spot, but I don't think you're going to want to drop from, let's say, 2 to 9, just because Cleveland's maybe not as attractive as the Saints.
Is the ideal situation for Shador to play right away or sit? Because obviously the Browns have whatever, they have the corpse of Deshaun Watson left. What is the best situation for Shador, do you think? Team-wise and just fit-wise?
That's a really good question. I think the obvious answer would be if the Raiders hire Ben Johnson to be their head coach, you go play with the Raiders. You have Brock Bowers to throw to. Tom Brady is looking over the franchise. That seems like a good fit on paper until you realize that you're playing in the same division as Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Sean Payton, right? That seems not great either. Cleveland's a tough one because, again, you're playing in the division with Baltimore. So Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and then the Steelers. Yeah. It's really tough. I personally, I think it is Cleveland because I do think Kevin Stefanski is a really good coach. I think that they can put a really good team around him. I think they've seen that they have a franchise or an owner that is willing to spend money. I don't think Cleveland, in Kevin Stefanski's offense that utilizes a lot of play action, a lot of under center stuff, isn't a bad fit for Shador at all.
Okay, and then the Travis Hunter aspect of this, it's very confusing because Travis Hunter has number 1 overall talent, and people in the Locked On Buffs world get mad at me for saying this. I don't think he's going to go 1 because if you're in a position to where you're going to take a wide receiver / corner at 1, you shouldn't be taking the first overall pick. You should trade back a couple slots, let someone get a quarterback. It's just the business side of things that I think people get upset about. But where do you see Travis sort of fitting his role? Like, what do you make of Travis Hunter?
Let me ask you this. Since you watch Travis Hunter every single game, what position do you think he is better? I know he's special at both, but if you had to choose between wide receiver and corner, which one do you think he's better at?
See, I take a business perspective to this. I think he's a better corner, but at the same time, wide receivers make more money and they have longer careers if they're good. So that's my perspective.
Yeah. And that's the way I think of this as well. And you look at, again, these teams. Cleveland needs a receiver. New England needs a receiver. Jacksonville could use a receiver. Las Vegas could use a receiver. The Panthers could use a receiver. The Saints could use a receiver. All of these teams are dying to find number 1 receivers. And I think Travis Hunter as a pure receiver in this class, I've asked a couple of the people that would know. They're comparing him to like Garrett Wilson as a wide receiver prospect, maybe a little bit less than Malik Neighbors, who went 6 last year. But if you're being viewed as a Garrett Wilson or a 95% of Malik Neighbors, you go into the NFL as a receiver. You're just going to make way more money over the course of your career. However, I think NFL teams are viewing Travis Hunter as a corner that we can get on the field 10 to 15 snaps a game as a wide receiver, in 4 receiver sets. And that's the best way to kind of preserve his body. But if I were Travis Hunter or I was Deion, I would tell teams, hey, he's a receiver in the NFL. That's the position that he's playing. He did win the Blitnikoff as he was as the best receiver in the country this year.
Yeah, didn't win the Thorpe. They didn't even make him a finalist. They were hating on him. So it's one of those things where if you're Travis Hunter, I feel like part of you wants to do it, right? Where it's like I could be that guy that could play both ways, but we haven't seen it. Like we haven't seen someone consistently do it. I think the last person I remember at least attempting was Patrick Peterson, and it felt like a gimmick. Like it felt like, okay, Patrick's just really good, so we're gonna throw him out here. I know Deion Sanders like legitimately kind of did it, but it just doesn't seem feasible. And so if you're Travis Hunter and a team says, hey, we're drafting you as a corner and you're not playing receiver, do you want to go to that team?
I don't think you mind. I mean, if you get drafted and pick 1, 2, or 3 by that team, I don't think it's a big deal. And it doesn't seem like Travis has a preference either way. I will say the easier transition is just to be a corner and then ease your way into offense. Yeah. But again, if you're going to be, we saw him play several games this year where he was up to 140, 150 snaps. Yeah. You just can't do that in the NFL. And I think the easiest way to get the best impact or the most impact from him, have him be a corner, help 10, 15 plays in offense. But that's not what I would advise him to do.
Yeah. The snap count's crazy. And honestly, it made me like forget what a normal snap count is. I saw the other day, I think it was one of the college football playoff games. And like, let's say with dual card, he played 46 snaps. And I was like, okay, is that a lot? Like we got Travis over here playing 120.
Well, and that's the thing. Like when I watch Travis Hunter's wide receiver tape, it's like, man, some of these routes that he's running in the fourth quarter are unbelievable. And he's breaking on slants and creating 3 yards of separation. You have to remind yourself like, hey, this is snap 151 that he's running here. Imagine what this would look like if this was only his 51st snap of the game. And I think that's what's so appealing to me. We know that the top end receivers in the NFL are making $35 million a year, while the top corners are making like 22. We even see like not great receivers in the NFL making $27, $28 million a year. So again, if you're Travis, I would make the business decision, say I'm a receiver. That's where I'm focusing my attention on moving forward.
Yeah, just look at T. Higgins' market this year. He's probably going to command a significant contract, and I don't think he'd be wide receiver 1 on any team in the NFL. Most teams in the NFL, we'll put it that way. I'm sure there's a couple where it's like, that's your number 1 receiver. So let's go. Final question here. I'll just run you through the top 5 we'll go top 6 because that's where the Raiders are. And I want you to pinpoint the top spot for Shedeur and Travis. So up first, we have the Tennessee Titans, and just tell me when to stop, and then you explain what team and why. Tennessee Titans, number 1. Cleveland Browns, number 2.
Cleveland is my favorite fit for Shedeur. I think they can maximize his ability right away. They desperately need to restart at quarterback, and I think Shedeur injects life and juice into that franchise.
Okay, so Shedeur goes 2, so then that leaves the New York Giants at 3, New England Patriots at 4, Jacksonville Jaguars at 5, Raiders
Boom.
at 6.
Boom.
Okay.
Jacksonville at 5 for Travis Hunter would be a lot of fun because I do think you pair him with Brian Thomas Jr. Now, all of a sudden, you've got one of the most explosive receiving cores in the NFL. Pairing them with Travis Hunter, maybe you get a young head coach in there. That's where I would like to see Travis Hunter land.
And we could finally put it into the drops montage of Trevor Lawrence, where it's like, look at all these perfect passes being dropped by his receivers. So you've heard it here. That's where Marcus has Travis and Shador going. Marcus, tell the people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. I host the Locked On Cowboys podcast 5 days a week. Also, the Locked On Dynasty Football podcast. So if you like fantasy football, dynasty football, check that out as well. And of course, at the 33rd team, where I think Monday is our first mock draft. We've got one coming out there. We've got some 2026 mock drafts coming out soon. So check all that out.
Arch Manning, QB1.
Right now, that's the plan.
Okay. So stay tuned. Check out Marcus's work, and you guys know where to find me over here at Locked On Buffs. We have a very exciting interview coming up, and you guys won't want to miss it. Let's just say he might be slinging the ball around for the Colorado Buffaloes next season. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in, making me your first listen. Go make the Locked On Dallas Cowboys your second listen, and I appreciate you guys for make me your first listen. Have some fun. Enjoy your Friday. Stay safe. Stay healthy, and obviously stay away from the flu because it's going around. So everyone have a great day. See you guys on Monday.